Welcome to Parenting Successful Teens, the podcast that cuts through the overwhelm and stress of this phase and offers parents simple, practical, cognitive, science-based strategies for keeping their teens on track. Join Master Coach and real-life mom, Allie Irwin, to talk about real teens, real problems, and the skills it takes to raise successful adults.
Well, hello, friends. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most common questions I get. It is, what do I do with a child that loves to argue, that seems to just argue with me for the joy of arguing with me? I love this question because I have one of those kids myself. So I love sharing the way that I was able to make his arguing way less annoying for me. What we want to do first is to lay out a little bit of groundwork so that you have a perspective, hopefully a new perspective, in the way that you see their arguing. And if you haven't already listened to the podcast I did on characteristics versus character flaws, I'm going to link that in the show notes so you can go back and listen to that one as well. If you have listened to it, or if you haven't, I'm going to just do like a quick reminder of the Wegmans 5-factor test. It's a personality test that is backed by science in a way that most personality tests, Myers-Briggs included, DISC included, are not. And the basic format of the test is you answer 44 questions, and then based on those answers, the test measures 5 personality characteristics. And those characteristics are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So you take the test and they show you in each characteristic where you fall on the spectrum. Okay, so each characteristic is like its own individual sort of number line. So you can either be high in that characteristic or low in that characteristic. And I love this test because A, because it's research backed, and B, it puts people on a spectrum of behavior versus in a box. So when you get the results of your test, you're not like, I am an INTJ. INTJ becomes a box and you start to identify with that label. When in reality, we are more, just to use introversion, extroversion, we are more extroverted in situations where we feel more comfortable, and we're more introverted when we're nervous or we're in new situations. Okay, we move up and down that spectrum depending on the situation and even depending on how we feel that given day and depending on what this situation requires. So believe me, I understand that is a generalization, but I'm using it to illustrate that we're not one thing. We exist on a spectrum of behaviors, and that spectrum, where we fall in that spectrum, we have like a natural set point, and then we can move up or down depending on what the situation, like how we want to be in that situation. And the third thing that this test really emphasizes is the idea that no characteristic is inherently good or bad. So even things like the characteristic we're going to be talking about today is agreeableness. It is not better to be high agreeable versus low agreeable. There are literally strengths and weaknesses of every way of being. And what happens oftentimes with parents is they over-identify with the strength of their way of being. And if they have a child that has a different way of being, especially one that the parents find annoying, like arguing, they interpret that characteristic as a character flaw. They think it's something that parents think it's something that it's their job to change or work on relative to their kids. So I'm just going to highlight again, the sort of point one is the idea that we have these characteristics by nature. Science has identified certain genes, certain gene expressions that are associated with different characteristics. And having a natural set point for that characteristic is an expression of those genes. And depending on the characteristic, it can be anywhere from 40 to 60% of that characteristic. Okay, that is the nurture half of the equation. But in addition to nurture, we have the nature half. Okay, and the nature half is created by our experiences. The way that we were parented, the neighborhood we grew up in, what our experience with school was like, the friends that we had, all of that is the nature half of the way we are. So that whole argument of nature versus nurture is really quite silly because it's always both. So I am highly agreeable by nature. By nature, I have a genetic expression that makes me value harmony, or that predisposes me to value harmony. And then on top of that genetic predisposition, then I had a particular set of family experiences. And I was raised in a society that teaches women to prioritize other people's needs over their own. Okay? Was raised in a society that teaches women that getting along with people was extremely important. Okay, so those experiences took my natural predisposition and taught me that if I just made other people happy, I would be rewarded with safety and love. So you're thinking about like my natural set point sort of on that spectrum, and you can see how my experiences moved me even farther towards being more agreeable. Over time, I trained my brain, not on purpose, but just because what we experience over and over and over, we develop stronger neural pathways for. And so I trained my brain to always be looking for ways to be helpful and make other people feel good. And in that way, my natural tendencies got strengthened. Now, if you're a total neuro nerd or are super into epigenetics, I would like to acknowledge at this point that that is a simplification of the way the whole system works. And I understand that, but I think simplification is useful when we're looking at if you are a high agreeable person and you have a low agreeable child. That simplification is a useful lens to look at those interactions. So we've looked at my half of the equation. Let's look at my child that loves to argue. I'm laughing because he really does love it. He wouldn't say that he loves it, but he's just genetically wired to be low agreeable. And I want to highlight here again, that is not a problem. It is not better to be high agreeable than it is to be low agreeable. Low agreeable people in general value facts and clarity. And they can be very efficient and very high achievers because they can be very single-minded about what they value. They value their perspective, their facts, their clarity over the other person's feelings. Again, it needs to be said that low agreeable people will say the things that high agreeable people are thinking, things that need to be said, but they are afraid to say because they are so worried about hurting the other person's feelings. To a low agreeable person, the high agreeable person can come off as disingenuous, right? They can think that the high agreeable person is lying by not just saying what needs to be said. The tricky part comes when you have a mismatch, when you have, in our case, a super agreeable mom and a lower agreeable child. And I see this over and over with my clients. They come to me and say things like, "Oh, my kids just hate me. Nothing I do ever makes them happy. They're so selfish. They never take my feelings into account." And some of them might say, and maybe this is you, that sometimes you don't even enjoy being around them because you always feel like they're looking for a fight. And then realizing that the reason that you're having those feelings is because you, as a high agreeable person, are prioritizing their feelings, harmony in the relationship over yours because of your natural tendencies. And in addition to those natural tendencies, this happens to all moms, you have internalized beliefs about what it means to be a good mom. You've heard a lot of those like dumb society idioms, like you're only as happy as your least happy child, which reinforces the idea that moms shouldn't be happy if their kids aren't. And even in some ways, your own love for your kids and desire for them to be happy gets in your way in these situations. Because you have this natural desire for harmony and they don't. And so that gives them power in this situation. That, again, I don't want this to sound like they're evil and they're manipulating you. But if you're saying on some level, you're saying, I'll do whatever it takes to make you happy in this situation because I don't want to argue about dishes, so I'll just do them. They're like, great, I didn't want to do dishes, and they'll just move on. And then you're left with, in your mind, only two choices, arguing with them or doing the dishes. So what I want you to first do is to just notice all these forces are at work. To just notice that you can, in some ways, need them to be happy in order for you to be happy. Because disharmony is so uncomfortable for you. You need them to be okay with what you're suggesting that they do, like the dishes, so that you can feel okay about asking them to do it. And can you see, like, in that need for them to be happy, it's really easy to get tripped up. And the way out is actually pretty simple. It's just letting them have their own experiences and their own feelings and their own reactions and letting that be okay. Just noticing your need for harmony, even just being aware, I have this need, dials down your attachment to it. Okay? Does that make sense? Just noticing, I'm feeling anxiety about asking him to do this chore because I don't want to have an argument. Just remind yourself he can have whatever reaction he has or she has. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. I can just let them have their own reaction. Okay, you can remember that disharmony is a trigger for you. And then just that awareness takes down the trigger. Or it's almost like you can even plan ahead. Like, okay, I'm going to ask him and he's probably going to complain about it. And that's going to trigger my nervous system. But that's okay. Like, because I know that it's going to happen. And then when it happens, you're like, oh, I knew this was coming. And you can just move on. Okay, it diffuses the situation because instead of making it mean something about him being lazy or not caring about your time or all of those things, you can think like, oh, that's just their low agreeable nature. Like he's just saying the facts that he does not want to unload the dishwasher. That doesn't mean I have to, and I don't want to unload the dishwasher either. That makes we can be in harmony in our desire to neither of us want to do this chore, but this is his chore to do. Okay, you can notice any urge you have to prioritize their feelings over yours. You can notice the ways that you make their comments mean something about you or your relationship. And that will dial down any of those stories we have that they don't care about us. Now, I want to also point out that the situation can be, obviously, it can be reversed. You could be the low agreeable person and your child could be higher agreeable. And you might think your kid is a people pleaser. You could be really worried about their ability to exist in the world because you're such a people pleaser. You could have a lot of fears that your child is going to get walked all over because you don't realize that harmony is its own reward for that child. That was more the situation with me and my mom. My mom is lower agreeable by nature. I'm laughing because she was always trying to toughen me up because she didn't understand my highly agreeable nature. She didn't understand that for me, harmony and really understanding and valuing other people's feelings was its own reward for me. So it really can go either way. You could be the high agreeable or you could be the low agreeable. The problem comes in when you have a mismatch and you're not recognizing, you're not understanding that that's what's going on. Now, the bonus is the minute you understand what's going on, then it becomes an opportunity. Rather than seeing this framework as like a way to judge or label people, it really becomes an opportunity to understand people and to really see the value in the child's way of being. Like I said earlier, oftentimes my son would say things that needed to be said that I was hesitating to say. He would bring up things that I was hesitating to say because I was trying to just have harmony, just get through the meal with some harmony. And once you understand that, it can really see the benefit in the other person's way of being. It increases your flexibility. It increases the range that you can move. Again, if you're picturing it on a number line, it increases your flexibility. You can move up or down in different situations depending on what that situation calls for. And having family members that are low agreeable really taught me that it's okay to, bring up difficult subjects. I don't have to shy away from them. And I also want to point out that having a low agreeable family member does not mean that you don't require respect in your conversations. Okay, being low agreeable is not a free pass to being rude. If you have a low agreeable family member, you definitely still want to teach them ways of conveying information that make it easy for other people to hear them. Okay, rudeness shuts down conversations, and you can teach a child not to be rude, but to convey their information in ways that make it easy for the other person to hear. Conversely, if you have a high agreeable child, you still want to teach them to prioritize their feelings, to keep their feelings and the facts of the situation on the table. Okay, understanding your child's way of being gives you more information about what they need so that their own ways of being in the world are useful and effective. So I hope this was helpful. Understanding these different personality characteristics and understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each of these characteristics dramatically improved our family's communication. And I'm really excited about you playing with these ideas, and I would love to hear from you how it goes. We can either connect on social media, or you can always email me at Allie@allieirwin.com with any questions, or again, like I said, play with these ideas and then email me and let me know how it worked for you. Have a great week, everyone. See you next week. Hey, if you enjoyed today's show and you want even more support and a shot of fresh inspiration in your email box each week, you have to get on my list. Sign up to receive my free guide on how to stop second-guessing yourself as a mom. There are so many decisions to make as a mom, and this guide will help you to make decisions and just move on. No more waking up 3 a.m. wondering if you made the wrong decision. This guide is so good. Even my non-mom clients are raving about it. So sign up today, and I will see you next week.